Welcome to the off season on Sports Radio 105.5 WEEI.
We're going to take a quick break right here. We're going to be back with a unique story of a coach and a team from Western Mass. We'll be right back on
Sports Radio 105.5 WEEI.
And now, back to the off season on Sports Radio 105.5 WEEI.
Welcome back to the offseason, sponsored by Bond Financial Services, and we'd like to welcome to the show now Tom Rivett, the boys soccer coach at Chicopee High School for the past 9 years. And Tom, recently you had a unique trip brought the high school team over to Ireland, Chicopee to Ireland, for a soccer kind of tour. Really haven't heard of anything else like that in the area happening before. Can you tell us how that came about and a little bit about the trip?
Well, sure. Thank you for having me on. In the spring of 2013, I began doing a little research concerning Chicopee soccer history, and I came to find out that in 1961, two professional teams, one from Ireland and one from Czechoslovakia, played a professional game at Zop Park in Chicopee. One of those teams was Shamrock Rovers from Ireland. So I tried to contact Shamrock Rovers, and somebody from their organization responded to my email and got me very, very excited. Started talking to some of the old timers in the city of Chicopee who were at that game, and one thing led to another. And during our fall season banquet, end of the season banquet, I had mentioned as part of my speech that I had been in contact with the Shamrock Rovers in Ireland, and perhaps someday, we could take a team over there. And that was the end of it until after the banquet, when a parent came up to me and said, well, if you really want to do this, I'll help you fundraise. And that's all I needed. Went to the school administration, Mr. Jim Blaine, our athletic director, and Roland Joyle, our principal. Spoke to them about it, and they said, let's do it. And then it was on from there.
Well, I recently read your blog of the trip, which is kind of how we asked you to be in here today. It was very well written and done. It's on chicopeesoccer.org, which is your website for your team. And as I'm reading that, I'm kind of coming to understand that the Shamrock Rovers are a pretty big deal.
Oh, the Shamrock Rovers are a big deal. In all honesty, before I started doing my research, I wasn't too familiar with the Shamrock Rovers. But the more research I did, the more excited I got, because Shamrock Rovers are the New York Yankees of Irish soccer. They are the real deal. They're the big dogs in Irish soccer. So when they started corresponding back to me, I got very, very excited. I told them that we were going to have a team, and we had the okay to go to Ireland, and we would like to get a game with one of their youth teams, sort of completing this 53-year circle, from 1961, and they agreed to it. And that was really that was the icing on top of the cake.
Well, that's a huge deal, because junior teams and premier teams, they're known to take tours from time to time and go play 3, 4, 5, 6 games overseas. But high school teams, an actual high school team, you don't hear that happening. And there's some things that have to happen to make that happen. One is getting the okay from the MIAA.
Right. I've been coaching high school soccer for 25 years, and one of my dreams, if that's not too corny to say that, but was to bring a high school team overseas. I took a premier level team over in 2000 to England, and it was just a life-changing moment for me as a young adult, and I know that it had a huge impact on the players. So to be able to bring a high school team over was always a dream of mine, and I never thought it could happen because of the specific rules that are in place for high school athletics. Coaches are not allowed to coach their players out of season. So for us to be able to bring a team over during the in-season would have been very difficult, because it's just a short season as it is. So Mr. Joyle contacted the MIA, told him of our plans, and he got the okay from the MIA for us to do this as a school-sponsored trip, with the stipulation that I didn't coach, or any of our coaching staff didn't coach the kids when we were over there. And I was more than willing to make that sacrifice in order to make this trip happen.
So that getting the blessing of the IAA and probably reluctantly, knowing you would not be able to coach over there as part of the stipulation. Who did coach the team over there?
Well, it's interesting because in 1961, as part of that, the Shamrock Rovers game versus Dukla Prague, Chicopee Youth Soccer had several youth teams playing in a Pee Wee game before the game, and we also had many youth soccer players who were ball boys during that game. So when I opened up the trip to potential travelers, I opened it up to anybody, Chicopee alumni, to parents, family, players, whoever wanted to make the trip. I would take them. If it was 15, it was 15. If it was 40, it was 40. And one of the people who came back and said that they would like to go was Mr. Chuck Babala. Chuck Babala was a ball boy during that 1961 game. So I couldn't coach. Mr. Babala was a soccer guy. Made the connection, and he said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I love to do it." So it's a great part of this story.
It's a great story, and Chris, it reminds me a little bit of Eddie Lowry, who was the caddy for Francis Ouimet during that great win for him, owning a car dealership. And the great Ken Ventori, former U.S. Open winner, worked at his car dealership.
Yeah, well, it certainly ties
pro.
everything all in together. A ball boy from that 61 game, now coaching, as you said, 53 years later over there, your team in Ireland. So you mentioned that you kind of first threw the idea out there at your end of the year banquet, which is, November or so, and short turnaround time to playing these games in a couple weeks ago. How many people ended up going on the trip, and how many players in total went on the trip?
Well, from the time we made that announcement at the banquet, I quickly gathered a couple of parents together to see if we could actually make this thing happen. And I contacted an old friend of mine from the JBO club, Mike Carney, who has taken teams over there to see if he could help us make this happen. So we had a meeting at the Rumble Seat Bar and Grill, our local soccer hotspot, and we said, "Yeah, I think we can do this. It's not going to be easy, but we can make this happen." So after we got the meeting together, I figured we needed at least 15 players to make the trip happen. So I opened it up to freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. Didn't matter if they were on the varsity or not. Whoever wanted to go could go. And I also, as I mentioned, opened it up to the alumni and just siblings of the players who went. So they had about a 2-week window of time between our meeting in January, our first organizational meeting, until I needed to have a firm yes or no. So about a week and a half went by, and I wasn't getting very much response. So I started getting a little bit nervous, and then bam, everybody started responding, saying that they wanted to go. So we went from having to need the minimum of 15 players to having 41 total travel with us. We had 21 soccer players went, and then 20 adults and siblings went along with us.
So you had the enthusiasm, the backings of the players, the parents, the friends. Now the very, very major slice of the pie here is the fundraising end of it. Tell us some of the things you did to raise money for this trip.
Yeah, fundraising was an important factor for us. The cost of the trip was $2,000, and that was all inclusive. That included the airfare, that included the room, and it included 3 meals a day, included several sightseeing excursions. But $2,000 could be $20,000 for some of my players. It didn't really matter. So my goal was to raise as much of that remaining $2,000 as possible. Airfare was $1,200. That was non-negotiable. That had to be taken care of right away. But we did have that extra $800 there that we could try to nip away at. So we got together and we started planning different fundraising. And one of the last things I want to do is fundraise, because everybody's always asking everybody for money. And as soon as you start fundraising for something, it's usually mom and dad and Uncle Bob and grandma and grandpa who are always dishing out the money. It's always the same people who are being asked to do that. So we try to come up with little guerrilla fundraising activities, trying to spread it out, trying to come up with some creative ways to raise as much money as we could in the short period of time we had. So I think we were pretty successful with that. We had different events. We had a Rock for Soccer concert, Cabot Street Pub, and Heavy Rotation. They played a rock concert for us. They donated all the door receipts. We had a tuxedo fundraising. Ron's Formal Wear in Chicopee donated a portion of all their tuxedos rentals to us, It was right during prom season, so it was perfect. That was pretty successful. We also, Under Armour was a huge sponsor for us. They provided the uniforms for us and soccer balls. Dan Tui over at PSI 91 donated 24 soccer balls. That was at least a $2,300 donation right there. That was very, very beneficial to us. We had a mega gift basket raffle, which had iPad Mini and raffle tickets, and that was a 4-month long raffle. That raised a lot of money for us as well. That was donated by the Arbors. And then, of course, we had our car washes, and we had our T-shirt sales, and various other little activities like that, trying to spread out the fundraising, so to say.
So you came up with the money, and you're able to go on the trip. Let's talk about the trip. You guys left on what day, and how many games were planned?
Well, the trip had us planned to play 3 games. We played against Geraldine's AFC. We played against the Shamrock Rovers youth team, and then we played against Corbally United AFC. And we also had 2 training sessions set up for the kids. And obviously, I couldn't coach, but we had Irish FAI coaches coach the team when we were over there. So that was fantastic. So we left on a Wednesday afternoon, 7:30 at night. And we arrived at 6:30 the next morning in Limerick, Shannon Airport.
So you guys flew right into Limerick, stayed at Limerick University, correct?
Yeah,
University of Limerick.
That's where we lodged. We lodged at the University of Limerick. University of Limerick was absolutely outstanding. They did everything they could to help us. You hear a lot of stories about the Irish and how friendly they are and how much they want to help, and I can tell you emphatically that it's true. Everywhere we went, didn't matter what city it was, they tried to help us. It was an outstanding experience. David Ward at the University of Limerick was a tremendous help to us. It was fantastic.
Well, again, for people that want to read a little bit more about this, your blog on chickabeesoccer.org spells it all out. But so the experience of playing games against maybe some better competition and training over there, you guys went 2-0-1, correct?
Yeah, it was pretty incredible because we really didn't know what to expect. Here we are, a bunch of boys from little old Chicopee heading over across the pond to play some European teams. So we really didn't know what to expect. The 3 teams that we played, they were all under 16 teams. Now I had several 14-year-old players, several 15-year-old players, and I even had a couple 18-year-old players because a couple graduating seniors went along with us. But it was every game was very competitive. They were very close, and I think the kids thought we would get blown away, but they did very well.
I think because the kids were all the same age, they had to get along and respect each other, and it just had to have been such an incredible trip. So you're 2-0-1. Tell us some of the places that you went when you weren't playing soccer.
Oh yeah, we had a very full schedule. That was one of my goals as well. Soccer is just a vehicle. We had to get this okay through the MIAA. It was a school-sponsored trip. As such, the educational aspect of it was very important to me as well, the cultural aspect of it. So we really booked a lot of activities when we weren't playing soccer. One of our first excursion was to the Cliffs of Moher. Fantastic 700-foot cliffs, glorious feat of nature, unbelievable. The problem with that trip is when we arrived, it was raining, and it rained a lot over there. And there was fog, and we couldn't see a thing. We were very, very disappointed about that. But as if something, luck of the Irish happened, it cleared up. There was about a 45-minute window of time where it was perfect, and I was so grateful for that the kids were able to see that wonder of nature. So the Cliffs of Moher was a very big trip for us. Then we went to Bunratty Castle, which was an ancient castle. We had a guided tour of that. The guided tour was fantastic. He kept our attention, kept the kids' attention, which was important, and it was very interesting. We also went to, as part of our trip, we went to...
You went to Cork? You went to the Blarney?
We didn't go to Cork.
Blarney Castle?
We were going to go to Cork. On that day, we had the trip set up to go to Blarney Castle. And, I heard a lot of negative things about the Blarney Castle, being a tourist trap, et cetera, but I thought it was an absolutely fantastic experience. All the kids walked up to the top of the Blarney Castle. They kissed the stone. and hopefully the eloquence will help me out here a little bit. But it was a great experience. And we were supposed to go to Cork. Unfortunately, that day, Cork had their hurling championship. So there were 40,000 people going into Cork, and our motor coach driver said, there's no way we're going to get a coach in there. And even if we did, you have to walk 2 or 3 miles to get into the city center. So we had to make an adjustment that day, and we went to the little picturesque town of Adair, Ireland, which is just a postcard town of Adair, which was also it just worked out fantastic.
Such a wonderful experience for all these kids. It's traveling. Some have said is the greatest education you can ever be exposed to, and they, thanks to the good people in Chicopee and your efforts, have experienced it. How'd you keep these kids in line? I mean, they're all feeling the ropes. They're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, young Irish lasses running around the countryside. How'd you do it?
Well, that was the concern. At Chicopee Soccer, our administration has been very, very supportive. In 2011, we took a 3-day trip, which was sort of our first away trip to Martha's Vineyard. We played a game there. And the kids were absolutely outstanding. They were fantastic. They had a great time. They behaved. They listened. They did everything we expected them to do. And during the past couple of years, we've done things such as that, and they've always been fantastic. And I told them that was the only reason why I would even try to take you over there, is because up to this point, you've been respectful. You've done everything I've asked you to do. It's the only reason why I would do that. So they were model. I mean, they weren't perfect, obviously. They were up quite late a couple nights. I had to bring them down a little bit, but they represented Chicopee, the United States, all of us very, very well. I'm very proud of them.
Well, I would think, your school, Chicopee High School, this is kind of a trailblazing effort for the high school team to go over there in any sport. So now it's open, it's out there that, this can be done. You guys did a great job of preparing the kids and putting this all together in a short period of time, but also your kids behaved in the way that Chicopee High School is very proud of what they did, the city of Chicopee and all that. So it's open doors for other teams to do that. And when I was reading about this trip and in the education of playing the sport over there at it's a European major sport over there, all during this World Cup time too, which took over the world this summer, and then tying it in with, hey, this is what another country's all about. This is Ireland. It couldn't have come at a better time, and you guys should be applauded for being the first ones to do it and kind of making it work that way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, that was one of the purposes of having the trip during this time frame, because we were over there for the World Cup final, and World Cup fever definitely took over the United States. But I will tell you this, when we were watching the World Cup final over there, the viewing parties we had over here were much, much more intense. Again, we had a spaghetti supper at the Rumble Seat Bar and Grill, and that's our home club basically. And the people who were at the Rumble Seat, cheered much stronger than the Irish did. So I told them, if you guys ever want to come back during the next World Cup, and we'll bring you down to the Rumble Seat, and we'll show you how it's really done over here in the States.
Were they open for that? Is there a return trip possible for that to happen for you guys?
Well, that's one of my hopes. I made a lot of contacts over there, and the offer is definitely open to every one of those teams to come over here and to do it again. I'd love to get the senior Shamrock Rovers team over here and play the Revolution, do something like that. That'd be a fantastic little twist as well.
How about your players? Do you think that they've grabbed some contacts and emails and stay friends with some of the opponents that they had over there?
Well, that's interesting because during our last game, Corbley against Corbley United, they had a reception for us after the match. So they have a nice clubhouse, and they had sandwiches for us and a lot of different items. It was really nice. But at first, their team stayed in their section of the room. Our team stayed in our section of the room. And I was like, this is not what this is supposed to be about. So we had a little toast to them. We cheered them. We supported them, saluted them. And then after that, the kids just started mingling, and they started trading. I said this on the bus, you guys are trading gamer tags, and all the kids laughed at me. I don't know why. Must be some kind of newer generation type lingo, but they were, the internet is incredible.
Sure.
And these online games are incredible. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they'll continue to keep the connections going.
Well, as Chris said, it's you really you've been a trailblazer in this effort. And, with all these kids, with their friends, the kids who have gone, and now their friends and their family, they're all going to want to go now, Ty. It's going to be easier, Tom. You're a young man. It's going to be easier the first time, as Chris and I have discussed. The first time of doing anything is always the most difficult, if not the most memorable. But it becomes much easier once you have the model, and you seem to have the model. When do you think you'll be pressured into, which will be a pleasant pressure, I'm sure, for you to do it again?
I'll do it tomorrow. I mean,
it's going to happen. It's going to happen again, whether it be 2 years from now, 4 years from now.
Yeah, it was such a worthwhile experience, and I encourage other sports teams to do the same thing as well. The opportunity is there. It's a big world.
That's something these kids are going to talk about for the rest of their lives. It's just great memories. Good stuff.
How this fall your team's going to be back on the field? You think you've gained not gained an advantage, but developed your team a little bit more from this trip too? Do you think that's one of the offshoots of this?
I would hope something rubbed off a little bit. We play a very, very competitive schedule. We're in the Smith division, which is the highest division of Western Mass soccer. So, I would hope something would rub off. Absolutely.
Great. Well, Coach Tom Rivett, we really appreciate you coming in and sharing stories of Chicopee to Ireland, your trip over there, and playing, as you mentioned, the Shamrock Rovers, the kind of the New York Yankees of Irish soccer. Congratulations on putting together such a good trip, and having such a great group of kids to take over there, and have nothing but positives coming back on that. Thank you for coming in.
And, great job, Tom.
Well, I thank you very much for having me, and I just want to thank everybody out there who supported us and helped us to make this happen. It was definitely a team effort.
Good job by Chicopee.
Yeah, and we'll be right back on
Sports Radio 105.5 W.